Kill a Mockingbird and Gone with the Wind, and unforgettable characters such as Atticus Finch, Rhett Butler, and Scarlett O'Hara have thrilled millions of readers decade after decade. Now, there is a new treasure trove of books out there that are mostly ignored. Many self-publishing authors are just waiting to get discovered. We are encouraging readers like yourself to take a chance and read their books. You can find them on Amazon.com, Amazon on Kindle, Barnes & Nobles, Goodreads.com, and Kobo. Also on Scribd, Versa, and iBook, or hopefully soon at your nearest public library.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our new episode of Bios to Books. I'm your host, Dan Davidson. Before I introduce today's guest author, I'd just like to thank our loyal followers for their support. And if you are new to the show, welcome aboard. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please press the subscribe button and join now. It costs absolutely nothing, and it goes a long way for helping us on YouTube. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our special guest today. She is an author, a television host, a public speaker, a blogger, an adventurer, and a fan of her family. Her adventures include scuba diving, hiking, skydiving, and deep-sea fishing. Among her adventures is conquering the debilitating disease MS and sharing her story with others through her book, Conquered, and by speaking to interested groups that also have similar interest in things such as MS. So welcome to the show, Denalee Call Chapman.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to this interview. So before we talk about your writing experience and your book, I think the audience would like to know a little bit about yourself. Where you came from, where you were raised, a little bit about whatever you're comfortable about speaking to. I did want to mention to our audience that I had your dad, Dennis Boyd, call on the show about a month ago. And he's quite a unique and interesting gentleman. But I certainly don't have to tell you that.
Nope.
Right? You did co-author a book with him, which we will talk about. And if any of our audience is interested in seeing the interview, it is on YouTube under Bios to Books. I highly recommend watching it. He is a remarkable individual and a very talented author. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about you, Denalee.
Okay. Well, I was born in a small town in Idaho. My parents were both born and raised in eastern Idaho. I was born in eastern Idaho, but before I was even a year old, my parents took our family, at that time, 3 children. I was the youngest at that time. We moved to California, where I spent the first 9 years of my life in a few different places in California. But then we moved on to Michigan, from Michigan to Pennsylvania, where I had my teenage years growing up. And that's what I really call southeastern Pennsylvania home. That's where, I feel like my roots are, and I love the countryside, and just those years of my life were just magical. And I loved it. From Pennsylvania, I went on to college. I came out west for college. For a couple of years. And then I lived in Japan as a missionary for our church for a year and a half. After that, hopped around. I got married. We lived in Utah, and then on the island of Guam, and then in Southeast Alaska, and then Henderson, Nevada. And now finally here back, I've come back to my roots, to East Idaho, and just kind of a roundabout way. And I do love the experiences that I've had living in different places, and just opening my vision to the goodness of people everywhere, and also the unique beauty of so many different places in the world. It's just, I am just constantly struck by how beautiful something else can be. For example, when we left the temperate rainforest of Southeast Alaska and moved to the desert of Nevada, the Las Vegas area, I was like, oh, what are we doing? But then as the cactus would bloom, or Lake Mead, beautiful blue jewel in the middle of the desert, like there is beauty everywhere. And Dan, right? You've lived in Nevada.
Absolutely, yeah. It's well, I think your entire life experience is an education in itself that you can't buy in a college. You can't get that from no matter how good the university is or what they're teaching you, once you go out there and meet other people from different worlds, different places, different cultures, it's an education that you can't get anywhere else. It's just amazing. I know my one son does a lot of traveling. He's a CEO of a company, and he always brought my grandchildren with him. And not just the beautiful place. I mean, he brought them to tough places like in South Africa and some of the other, less than successful countries as far as poverty goes. They had their share of poverty. So those kids learned and saw what it was like to live the bad life too. And I don't think you can ever replace that kind of an education. And so what you experienced is really good. And I'm sure your time as a missionary had to be unique too, because that's something I always wanted to do. I'm not a very religious guy. I mean, certainly believe in God and everything, but I always wanted to be a missionary because I just see something there that's beyond, just satisfying. It's just tremendous. So I admire you for that. I really do.
Oh, thanks. It was really a great experience. And you're right. It's so unique because you set aside all of the normal things that we are responsible for in life, right? And focus on other people. The focus is on serving and loving and lifting other people. And it's definitely a unique time in life. The rest of my life experiences have been so different from that and also beautiful and lovely. But it was a fast year and a half, and it was beautiful. And I'm glad that I had the experience. But if I had to pinpoint, it's really hard to say this is the best time of my life. Looking back over life, I can remember in our home in Alaska, having all we have 5 children, having all 5 of them still living at home. There's pretty good age gap between them. So I knew that time was short. I can remember sitting there and saying, oh my gosh, life does not get better than this. But then it does, there are other things that are just amazing.
Sure. Life is a reward in itself if you allow it to be. I mean, we have our bad times too. Everybody does. Yeah. But if you look at the whole overall picture, life is pretty good. There are people that won't say that because they go through some tremendous struggles, and I understand that. Yeah. But you have to kind of look at the positive side if you can, because life is good if you let it be. Yeah. That's the way I think of it. But I don't know. Yeah. So we're actually gonna. When did you actually begin taking interest in writing? And can you remember the first written project you completed?
Yes. So let me just backtrack a little bit.
Sure,
I did go to college, but I only went for a year and a half. I went halfway through the semester of my last semester of my second year. And I didn't finish school. I always liked English and writing and reading. But I didn't finish. I instead got into a career, and I thought, I'm just not the student type, that's just not me. And I really, that was one of the things I said never to, and I'll tell you, never say never. I went back to college at age 60 and I finished. I got my degree.
Good for you.
Thank you. But that was one of the things I said, I'm never going back to school again, because I like learning in other ways. And so I have learned more than once, stop saying never, because that's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, it usually does. Yeah.
It does. It always does for me. So I wrote my first book, Conquered, well into my adult years. My children were grown when I wrote the book. And it was at the suggestion of one of my children. My son said, Mom, you have this experience of having had multiple sclerosis and no longer having it. You need to share that. Just write. You like writing, just write it. And it was a good suggestion. I wrote it, and it was so cathartic, and not only that, but it was, I had a lot of people contacting me, being friends or family of somebody else, and saying, this person I know has MS. Can you talk to them? And I told my story over and over so many times that I thought, if I write it in a book, it's more easily accessible to anybody who needs it. And that's what started my writing career, which isn't really a career. I don't make money doing it, but I love it so much. It's just a way to get all this that's inside out and available for other people if they want it. And if not, it served me well.
Sure. And that's exactly what writing is about. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but I mean, being an author, anybody that wants to be an author because they want to get rich and famous is doing it for the wrong reason. That's my opinion. Your first obligation is to yourself and what you want to share with people. If they want to read it, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. And it's very personal to me, your book, Conquered. I didn't read it yet, but I did read the preface, and because my daughter-in-law has MS. So, so it was very powerful to me and very well written. And I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is just my personal experience. And I know, just as a disclaimer, I know that a lot of people with autoimmune diseases or really any health issues do all the right things and still are plagued with the disease.
Sure.
I understand that. And I understand that my experience is not normal, but there are things that activities that I did, mindsets that I had, things that I changed in my life that would make life easier for anybody experiencing MS. And if you don't have to figure it out on your own, if you can, say, hey, this worked for somebody, I'm going to try it too, instead of like this, trial and error, or even giving up. A lot of people just give up and they say, I have this disease, there's nothing I can do. But I believe there is something that you can do. And so in that way, whatever the outcome is, whether it is a lifelong debilitating disease for you, or whether you are able to completely conquer it like I did, which is just really in my mind a miracle, it doesn't matter. Putting some of these practices into place will make life a little bit easier, a little bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. And I think attitude has a lot to do when you have negative things happening to you.
Yeah.
If you keep a positive attitude, I think it helps a lot too. It's not always easy to do, but that's what you need to do. And like I said, I took it very personal because my daughter-in-law has it, and I'm going to get the book for her so she can read it. And,
good.
She handles it very well. She's a very strong woman, and she handles it well. But it's always good to share that experience with other people. So, before we get on to, we're going to talk about your books now and give you a chance to do a little brief synopsis on some of your books. But I meant to ask you this before. I kind of like skipped over it. That's my bad. You had a TV station, local TV station in Vegas that you did a show on. And you used to interview people. I'm just curious, out of all the people you interviewed, who to you was the most powerful or most impressive interview you ever done?
That's a really good question. So my television experience actually started way before Las Vegas. It started when I left college. I started working at the Osmond studio during the Donnie and Marie days.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was my introduction into television. And I loved it. When the Donnie and Marie show ended, the studio started doing commercial productions and then did some TV specials. And I was really just in the right place at the right time and got to work up through the ranks, at the very low level, a runner, and then, all these different things, and work my way up and learn the what goes on in the back end, which is like tremendous. There is so much that happens. And so then when we lived in Alaska, we lived there for just a few years before I approached the owner of the TV station, the local access television station there, and said, hey, how about we do a show, just a human interest show, like magazine style show? And he said, sure. So for many years, for 6 years, 8 years, I can't even remember exactly how long, we had a show there. We had 2 different shows there. So when my family and I moved to Vegas, well, it was Henderson, we got in contact with a production company there, and we did 1 season of a talk show, kind of a talk show. It was just interview style show before the recession of 2008 hit, and that the TV station that we were airing on actually went out of business, and that was the end of that. But everybody has a story. So I can't pinpoint a most interesting person there, but I will tell you that some of the celebrities that I was blessed to work with way back in the Donnie and Marie days, there are some really incredible people. Paul Williams, Dick Van Dyke, Oh, the ventriloquists, just people who have busy lives and are well known, and yet they are just kind, gentle people who care about others.
Yeah.
And like I say, everybody has a story. So most interesting, I can't even pick one. Everybody I've ever interviewed, I'm like, your story is so cool. And it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people have, yeah, even just ordinary people
Mhm.
usually wind up having great stories to tell. They don't even know they have the stories until they start talking about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just curious if there was one that just stuck out a little bit more than others, but I can understand why, with that many people you were interviewing, it would be hard to pinpoint one. I
So as
understand that.
far as interviews, that's what I said is correct and what you're saying is right. But there is one show that we did that was really, really heartwarming to me. And this was in Alaska. We had a traveling museum, a B-24 and a B-17 from World War II. They traveled around the country so that people could
Right.
see them. And they came to Sitka, where we lived, and we got to ride in the plane from well, we went to another island to Wrangell, and just standing there, we toured the plane. So climbing into the tail gunner's spot, or
Right.
looking down through where the bombardier would, drop the bombs, or
Right.
standing in the open window where the machine gun still sat, and just like reliving or trying to feel some of the experiences that these patriots who
Right.
sacrificed everything felt, and seeing the majesty of the land and the ocean there from such a patriotic location. Like, I just felt so much patriotism rise within me, and
Mhm.
so much gratitude for um, the the men and women today and a long time ago who have sacrificed so much, and just so much gratitude to live in a place where you and I can sit here and talk about anything we want to talk about, and it's
Yep.
okay. We are so blessed, and often we do get caught up in the things that are wrong, and we jump on a bandwagon, or we focus on what isn't going right, and it's so easy to forget all of the good. Anyway,
Right.
that was something that really stood out to me during those
That,
years.
that's very well said. Really, it is. That's the way I feel about the country and the people that have sacrificed before for us to be at this point in our lives. I did serve in the Air Force myself
Ah,
for 4
thank
years,
you.
so I know a little bit about the B-17 and some of the other bombers that you were referring to. But I always wonder how I would have did in that situation, one of those planes getting shot at, I mean, out there in the middle of nowhere, getting all that flak, and it's just amazing how they did it. And it's a period of time, and I'm not taking anything away from the young men and women who serve today, because they're still great people.
Mhm.
They sacrifice everything for our country. I'm not taking away from them, but as far as I'm concerned, the Second World War provided the greatest generation of all times. There's no question in my mind
Just
about it.
amazing people who
Yes,
just selfless people.
yes,
Wonderful
very true.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, the way you just described it, it's well said, very well said.
Thank you, Dan.
So let's get back on point now.
Okay. Okay.
that was my fault.
Oh,
But
no, thanks
anyway,
for letting me talk. I love to talk about things like that. Thank you.
let's talk a little bit about your books.
Okay.
I have a list here. My vision is not as good as it was, so let me make sure I'm reading it right. Let's talk about them individually, so you can give a little brief synopsis to the
Okay.
audience, because we have an audience of mostly authors.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of readers that watch the show too, but a lot of them are young, new authors that are
Mhm.
struggling and everything. So they like to hear a little bit about books that you've done yourself. So
Okay.
let's start. Let's start with just one verse.
Okay, so I have 2 volumes of just one verse. I am a very spiritual person. I am also religious. And scriptures are important to me. My mom and dad both raised us to believe in God, and to trust Him, and to accept Him into our lives, and to look at the different tools that were given to help guide us through life. And I believe that the scriptures are one of those tools. They are guides. And my mother, before she died, I spent some time with her, and she was memorizing scripture verses. And I was so intrigued with that because some of them were long and hard. And I talked to her a little bit about that. And she just said, I just want that to be a part of me. I want to treasure the scriptures. I want to make them a part of my life. So I started memorizing different scriptures with her. And as I did, I noticed that I was focusing on each individual word because the placement it's not like our natural language. It didn't really flow. So I had to really focus on it. And as I did, I started to gain so much more insight into what each individual verse would mean to me personally at this time of my life. And I realized that at different times in my life, I could peel away layers like an onion, and they mean something else to me at a different time. And so my 2 volumes of just one verse take 2 verses of scripture, and each volume takes a different verse, and I break it apart word by word and what it can mean, what it does mean to me, and what it can mean to another person. And just with the idea that I feel like scripture, just like inspiration and just like life experience, is individual to everybody. And what you may get out of reading something could be completely different from what I get. And that's the beauty of it, that that we can make anything personal to us if all we need to do is be intentional about focusing on it and really, really making the scripture or the life experience or whatever it is we're talking about part of us. We internalize it. That's what those 2 books are about.
So what I get out of this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what you're, what church you follow or anything. When you read scripture, no matter where it comes from, if you break it down carefully, you're going to get a lot out of it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, Dan. And that, and also that there's just so much good out there. If we look at all of the different scriptures, all the different religions out there, there is truth and goodness and guidance, instruction and solace, and just so much there available for everybody, no matter what our beliefs are. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, good. That's interesting. Let's move on to, I hope I'm saying this right, YOLO?
YOLO, yeah, YOLO. Lessons learned from Eve and Esther. So that's a book that's really a compilation of a bunch of my thoughts when I was, for a while, I spent time on the speaking circuit, and I was asked to talk about different topics, and I realized there was a common thread in these topics. It was, grab on to life experiences. YOLO is an acronym for You Only Live Once, right? And so you grab these different life experiences and you just really live in them, really just dive into them and live in them. And that was the common thread through all of the things I shared in that book, YOLO. And when I wrote the book, I tweaked some of my presentations that are included in the book to include from the Bible, Eve and Esther. And I just love those women and how they personify the different attributes and characteristics and practices that I describe in that book.
You speaking about Esther, I mean, I'm not as well versed as you are in scripture, but I remember her being a very powerful woman, from what I remember reading about her.
Yeah.
So that kind of interests me myself. I might check that book out. See what you have to say about that.
One of the things I really love about Esther is that, like, she didn't seek after power or anything. She was thrown into it.
Yes.
And in fact, it was a scary, really scary situation. And she rose. She was like, yeah, maybe this is why I'm here. Maybe, who knows, but what I'm paraphrasing, but that I came for this purpose and all of the good that she did. And so many times in life, all of us, we are thrown into situations that we don't really like and that are hard and scary and uncomfortable and unfair. And, but what can we do with that? And that's what I love about Esther, is what she did with it.
It reminds me, it seems to me that some of the people, if you go down through history, that didn't want power but got stuck with it anyway
Yeah,
did very well with it. Not so much for the people that sought power as much as
exactly.
people who wanted to stay away from it, and they got it anyway.
Isn't
And
that so interesting to look at history that way and see? And
right,
the people who seek for power, boy, can they be destructive,
they sure do. We've
right?
seen that. We've seen that over and over, just in this country alone, but
Yep.
also on the world stage, we've seen what power can do to people
Yeah.
and what they can do to countries. So yeah, it's an interesting
Hmm.
observation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this next book we're going to talk about, I'm interested in because you co-authored this with your dad,
Oh, yeah.
The Three-Cornered Blanket.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to
let's
show it to you there.
good. Okay. Yeah.
Just a
Okay.
little tiny book, little
Yeah.
tiny book.
I,
It
I,
was
I believe somebody else in the family did the illustrations, if I'm right.
my daughter. Yes.
Okay.
My
All
daughter
right.
did.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-generation project and it was just fun. My dad, somebody knew that my dad was writing and said, "Hey, why don't you write a book for children?" It was a young lady who asked that and he said, "Okay." And he wrote it and shared it with me. And I'm like, "Dad, that's really good. That the concept is really good, but the language, we got to change the voicing there a little bit. Do you want some help?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Right.
So we worked together on it and it was super fun. And it's now also an audiobook, which was very fun to do.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I know myself. I mean, I've never tried writing a children's book, but I know it's a different ball game altogether. And like you said, the language, how you relate to children on that, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, people say, it's only a kid's book.
Yeah.
Try writing one.
Yeah,
It's not that easy to
you're
do
exactly right,
because
Dan.
your audience is totally different than you're used to writing for. And
Mhm.
that's why your dad was fortunate that you read the book and did a little editing and help contribute to some of the interesting parts of it. I'm sure dialogue had a lot to do with it too. I
Yeah.
haven't read the book yet, but it's
With
not an easy.
It's not, it's a whole different feeling, but it was super fun. I had never worked with anybody else on a project like
Mhm.
this before. So it was really fun to do. We laughed a lot, at finding, coming up with phrases like you say, the dialogue that goes on in there, the conversations.
Right.
Talking as a little kid is a lot different than speaking as an adult.
There you go. And looking into the mind of a child is totally
Mhm.
different than trying to
Right.
look into the mind of an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge, in itself. And the illustrations are beautiful.
Oh, I'll pass that on to my daughter. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So now this next one we're gonna talk about. This is I'm sure this is a little tough for you. I found I read the preface on this one too, and it was very powerful and very heartwarming. It really was, and that's what my mother's dying taught me about living. So I'd like you to share a little bit about that with us, and talk about it.
I will. So, yeah, and it's a very tender subject. Um, so I grew up in a family there are 6 of us children, and we were all blessed, really blessed to be with my mom a couple weeks before she passed away. And then 3 of us were there with my dad when she did pass away. We were able to stay through the process. And next to birth, death, and along with birth, death is the most sacred experience to have.
Mhm.
It just is. I just feel like we were so blessed to be a part of that, and it was a gift, not only from God, but from my mom and my dad. It was a very tender time for both of them, and I got to be kind of a fly on the wall. Well, not really that. I was actually a participant too, and my
Mhm.
sisters who were there. My brothers, had jobs they had to leave for, so although they were there earlier, they weren't there for that. So this was over the experiences I share, the epiphanies I had, those were over a period of a couple weeks, and such insight into just really the sacredness of death and the truth that life continues beyond death, as mom would be in and out, back and forth between us and the other side.
Yeah.
We knew that there were connections that she had on the other side, and that her leaving was only hard for her, and that she didn't want to leave us, but she knew, she experienced the gradual process of moving to the next
Right.
existence. And
Right.
it just was such a beautiful experience for me and for all of us that were there. And so what I share in that book, they are really super personal, tender experiences. But I think that my belief is that it really applies to everybody because everybody dies.
Sure.
And it's nice to, I know that some people are taken really quickly. With my mom, we had time to slowly let her go.
Right.
And it's its own kind of grief, Every death is just heart-wrenching and soul crushing. And my experience was different than other people's might be, but it was so beautiful. I wanted to share it in a book.
You did it very well, very touching. Like I said, I only read the preface, but that was enough to catch me. That's for sure. It caught me really. It hit me really hard because my mother passed away in my house, and in the middle of the night, so I didn't get to share that. She passed away suddenly, but my mother-in-law. You described how your mother passed away. It was very similar with my mother-in-law. She was there for a while, passing away, and the night that it happened, we were there, thank God, to see that. And, just the look on her face that she was ready to go.
Yeah.
And she had a tear in her eye, and, she just smiled at us, and I knew it was okay. But it was it was touching. It was.
It's so tender, isn't it? And just something to cherish, something that we hang on to. Yeah.
I choke up now when I talk about it because it's. I mean, as much as death deprives you of the person and takes them to another place, it's still a beautiful gift in itself.
So beautiful. Yeah. Thanks, man.
It's so anyway. I don't want to dwell on that, but I really appreciate you sharing that with me because I know how hard it is for you to talk about it. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So let's talk about rural deliveries.
Okay, this is so this is my only novel, Rural Delivery number 3. Isn't rural a hard word to say?
Yes, it is, especially when you're from New York.
You are right. Oh, that's cute. So one summer I thought I think I want to try to write a novel, and so I wrote it in a summer, and this was while I was in college. And this last time, so this was I'm 62 now. So this was, I was 60 when I wrote it. And so I thought I'd written this great novel. It was half the size, by the way, when I finished it, it was half the size that it is now. My degree is in creative writing. So I really learned so much in this for my senior project, or I can't even, I don't remember what it's called, but at the university I went to, there is a project your senior year that you are required to complete for one of your classes. And so I had a mentor to help me through I chose as my project to revise the book and make it really publishable and sellable to, that maybe I could get a publisher to buy it rather than self-publishing. Right. So I had some really actually almost painful situations where he's like, this doesn't make sense. Take it out, or you might want to rethink this. And I'm like, that's my favorite part, and finding out that it really wasn't really as good as I thought it was, and so consequently, I ended up with what I think is just absolutely a fantastic novel. It's a historical novel. And thanks to my mentor, it's so much better than it was when I began. And I would just advise anybody who's writing to find a mentor, find somebody else who is a writer or an editor or even just an avid reader to look at it and say, this scene, I get what you're saying, but I don't know what it smells like there. And I don't know what the whole feeling is. I just know what you're seeing ahead of you. Tell me what the whole rest of the room looks like. Things like that. He would really get me thinking. And so I got into the mind of the of the characters, the different characters here. I got into I was able to really get into their minds because this mentor helped me figure that out. So it was a fantastically fun project to work on. So it's the story of a 14-year-old girl who grows up is growing up in the house that actually I use my Pennsylvania house, the house I grew up in Pennsylvania. She grows up in that house, which in reality was a house that hid runaway slaves or helped with the Underground Railroad. And so I take that, and she finds a portal and transports back into the 1800s and eventually meets Harriet Tubman and helps her with rescues. And so it's a historical novel, which was really good for me to practice learning and then tweaking it to something that could have happened to a young person at that time. And so there's that fantasy part of it, of traveling back in time travel, which is, such a common element for young adult books.
Right. So you have a historical fiction novel with a slight twist of paranormal in there.
Yeah.
Time travel, which is always works. It's always interesting, and it's an interesting concept that people always want to read about, because everybody wants to either go back in time or ahead in time. Most people want to go back, but there's people that want to go ahead too. So that's a unique touch to that. I find that very interesting. My second novel, Twice Upon a Time, was similar to that. It was about an elderly couple that had a chance to go back and fix their early life as teenagers. And so it's, I like that concept. I always did. I'm not good at it. I have to tell you right now. The paranormal and me don't work really well together, but I struggle with that, and I still wrote it. I'm more into the historical fiction. My first novel was about my life in the Air Force when I was serving in South Korea. So it's fiction, of course. It's called Butterfly Wish. It's fiction, but it's based on a lot of what I either experienced or saw while I was serving there.
Oh, so, I need to pick that up, Dan. I want to read that. I'm going to order it when we get finished with this interview and read it.
I didn't do that to market my book. I was just trying to explain that I understand the difference between historical fiction and putting a little touch of paranormal in there too. I think I want to read that book. It sounds like something I want to read, because I was big into the Civil War and what happened with the poor people, that were mistreated and some of the suffering they went through and everything. So I will definitely pick that up. I want to read that one. That sounds good to me.
It is fun to throw in a little bit of fantasy in there, just kind of to throw it in, especially when you're talking, my audience is middle grade and young adults. So when you're talking about the younger readers, and there is so much out there, there are so many good books. And so I know this is just another one of them in there, but it was really fun to write because, I wrote it as if I were in that experience as a 14-year-old, and I was able to put myself into a 14-year-old mind, which 14 was a tough year of life. Now that as I look back and think
for
about
all of us, yes,
yeah, for everybody, and for parents of 14-year-olds, right? Don't you think that 14 that is rough? So I don't know. I must have subconsciously said, let's make the 14-year-olds have a good year, because that is a tough time of life. But it was fun to write. And it was also really good for me to do all of the research that came with that.
Right.
Really finding out what really happened back then and trying to bring some of that to life. So anyway, it was fun and I loved it. And I would love to write another novel sometime, and maybe I will.
You probably will. I'm sure you will. Yeah, it's like when I deal with the paranormal part of it, like time travel, or my last book, Juby Walker, it's about reincarnation. I struggle with it because I always try to justify what shouldn't be justified.
Yeah.
Just write it. Just write it and let people decide whether they believe it or not. Because I struggle with that, both with my second book and my third book, because I said, is this really believable? Can this really happen? But you're not writing it for that reason. You're writing it because you want to tell a story.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. That's one of the advices I give new authors. Don't try to justify what you're writing. Write
I love that.
and see what people feel about it. You might not get the response you like. It can happen. You're going to get reviews that don't work your way. Don't go your way, so to speak. But you have to. You don't write it to justify anything. You just write it to tell a story, and that's what I think you did with that particular book, Rural Delivery #3. You just write it and let people decide.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it was
can't, you
just
can't,
fun project.
well, you can't be wrong when you're writing anything with fantasy in it, because that's all about your idea of what you want to see. The
Yeah.
historical fiction part you have to be careful with, because you want to
Hmm.
make sure it stays accurate. But the other part, you sort of got an open door for that. So
Yeah, gets to
that's the
be
way I
whatever
do
we
it
want
anyway.
it to be. I think so too. Yeah.
Yep, yep. But that's interesting. So I'm gonna grab a copy of that. I
All
am,
right.
because I love historical fiction, love it. So
Me too. And
that's
I
interesting.
love young adult fiction too. It's so the kids today, to grab them, we have to be very, very interesting because life is so fast paced now, right? And so kids can jump from one thought to another. And so young adult fiction is made to grab the kids. So it is interesting. It is
Yeah,
very interesting. So I love to read it as much as write it.
and it's challenging. I haven't really, my books don't really go directly to young adults. I mean, they could read them,
Hmm.
but they're not really directed at them. But I have always thought about writing one book that is directed definitely at young adults, and I haven't done that yet, but I'm looking
Ooh,
into
that's going to
doing
be
that.
fun for you to do. I'm
Yeah,
excited that you're going to try.
yeah,
That's fantastic that you are giving yourself new challenges like
yeah.
that.
Absolutely, you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
whole audience out there in the world, and
Mhm.
if you narrow yourself down to one particular audience, I think you're cheating yourself, and I
Yeah.
think you're cheating the reading public too. So,
Yeah, I
any,
agree with that.
as you know, most of our audience consists of authors. Many
Mhm.
are new and self-published authors. I mean, there are a lot of readers that watch our show too, but
Mhm.
it's designed to help authors out. That's what it's designed to do. So a lot of the questions they ask me are very, basic questions. So I like to share some of those questions
Okay.
with you and see what you think about it and see how you may respond to it. The first one I can think of is: do you think self-publishing is a good way to go if you can't find an agent or a big publisher interested in your book?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a friend who is an author who has been published. She got an agent and she has been published, and she still has to do her own marketing. Like her books are available in the publishing company has made them available in some places where she might not have been able to get her foot in the door, but she still has to do so much of her own marketing anyway. And there's so much censored there. So many requirements she has to meet, um as far as their editorial team and tweaking things that maybe she's not completely comfortable with as compared to self-publishing. For me, I only have myself to answer to. And
Right.
and at first, when I first started self-publishing, it felt kind of like I had imposter syndrome, I'm an author, but not really.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that's true anymore. I think that self-publishing, I love living in this day and age where it is so doable and might even be preferable to being published by one of the big publishing companies.
Yeah, I actually agree with you with that statement because I've been a self-publisher for all my books, and I mean, yeah, there's a downside to it. You have to struggle more with the marketing and trying to get it out there and getting yourself out there. There's a struggle, but I don't like control. I don't like somebody that has control over me.
Hmm.
It bothers me. I'm not saying it's all bad. It's not, but I mean, what
Hmm.
you're doing is you're sharing yourself with someone else that
Hmm.
makes decisions for you,
Yeah.
whether they're good or bad, they make decisions for you. Not to mention the fact that they're getting a good piece of the profit of your books anyway,
Yeah.
and that's what motivates them. They don't care so much about you; they care about making money off of your
Mm.
book. So,
Right.
I'm not downgrading, uh, big publishing houses or literary agents that represent you.
Mhm.
I mean, that's all good if you want to handle it that way, but to me, it interferes with what I'm trying to do. So you
Yeah.
have to balance. You have to balance everything out. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And let me just throw this in there. I queried a lot of literary agents, hundreds, for my novel. And I had a couple that we went beyond a rejection letter, a couple where I got, well, yeah, I'm interested. Let me look. And where we got into conversations, none of those went. I didn't secure an agent. And in the end, I do see the advantages to that. And I think that it is fantastic, but it's also, the odds are not in your favor.
No, not at all.
They just aren't. And so don't let that stop you from moving forward, because there are so many good books out there that are self-published, and we wouldn't have them if people stopped right at that point. If they can't get an agent, therefore they can't get a publishing company to buy it, and they stop, and then the world doesn't get their book. No, share it, publish it. Self-publishing is so easy. There's no reason not to.
I agree 100%. Well, there is a mindset by some new authors that if I don't get represented by a big publishing house and I don't get a literary agent representing me, I'll fail. And that's not true.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's tougher, yes. But the only time you fail is if you fail. There's so much, like you said, there's so many good authors out. That's why I do the show. It's not about me. It's about the authors that are out there that aren't getting the exposure they need to get. It's about talented new authors that don't get a chance. So that's what this show's about.
Yeah, I love that this show exists, Dan, and that you are introducing us to so many amazing people, because we don't, as readers, sometimes we don't know where to look too, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you there. Authors, like, if you want to write and self-publish, there is nothing to stop you. It is not expensive. It is not difficult. And there are so many helps along the way.
Sure, absolutely. And, I mean, there are, I don't want to get off on a different, tantrum here, but there are some difficult things when you self-publish. For instance, I've always found that editing is a very challenging thing to do. And my first 2 books, I spent a lot of money on editing because I thought I had to do that. I had to do it that way. And what turned me off, and I'm not knocking editing, because editing is critical, and there are a lot of good editors out there. So if you can afford them, that's fine. But don't quit because you can't afford them, because there's software out there, editing software that'll help you. There's other ways to go if you can't afford to spend $2,000 or $3,000 every time you want to get an editing in the book. Don't let it stop you, because there's other choices. I just wanted to throw that in because, like I said, I spent a lot of money on my first 2 books on editing, and you know what? After it was all over, everything was said and done, I found mistakes.
Isn't that crazy? Oh my gosh.
It drove me crazy. It just absolutely drove me crazy. I said, why didn't I just do this myself then? Because, I mean, and I'm not knocking the editors, because they can only do so much. You have to keep giving it back to them and having them relook at it, proofread it, whatever you need done, and it still doesn't come out perfect. But then I saw, I do a lot of, I don't read as much as I used to because of this show and some other things that I'm obligated to, but I used to be a very avid reader. So I would read popular books from very good authors and find mistakes in it.
Me too.
Now
every
this
time.
This is the amazing part. So you spend all this money, or you get represented by a big publishing house, and there's still errors.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with it. I know it's frustrating.
Yep.
And it's heartbreaking. To me, it's heartbreaking because, my God, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I spot that? But we know we're our own worst editors in itself.
Yes.
So, when we do our own work. But there is software out there that you can purchase for a very reasonable cost that'll help you with. So don't let anything stop you. Anyway.
Yeah, and that makes me think of another point for writers too about editing. So one of the things I learned from my mentor actually, and actually from other people, is that when you're writing a book, don't be an editor at the same time. Just write it, because we get stunted in editing exactly what it's coming out. We're like, wait, does that sound right? And we change it, and then we forget what the creativity kind of gets like smushed down and. So just let it all out. It doesn't matter if they aren't complete sentences, or if that's not exactly the way you wanted to go, and you're going to have to put in more detail or anything. Just spill it out onto paper.
Right. I agree. And like you said, the creativity part gets affected if you let the editing,
Yeah.
control you. So
Yeah.
that's a very good point. Very good point. So, do you have any suggestions as the best way to market a new book? That's always a question.
I know. I kind of knew this question was coming because I've watched your show. And I'm really sorry to say I don't have any good suggestions. I do not do well marketing my book. I have a small stack of each of my books and I give away more than I sell. And I just do. I have, but there are some things that have helped. Like it's not really directly marketing, but I've given some to school teachers, librarians, and said, "Hey, look at this and see if maybe you want to get some more copies." So I guess I really don't have advice. I am not good at marketing my books, except if you give away enough, you're going to expose more people who will share it with other people.
That's good advice. I mean, I give away a lot of books myself.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I go to book signings and stuff like that. I go to places like fairs, and
Mhm.
I do a lot of, like, not a lot, but I've done a couple of paranormal fairs where they
Oh,
focus on
cool.
the paranormal,
Mhm.
and I sat there with my books, and I sold a few,
Mhm.
not a lot, not a lot,
Mhm.
but there is no perfect answer to this marketing thing. I don't know what it is. You just try to get as much exposure for your book as you can, and see where it all leads to. Because, like I
Yeah.
said, I don't think anybody has the answer to that question, but it's always asked.
Yeah, I know it's always us. Well, I think that there is the good advice to be prepared to take on any opportunity. So when an opportunity comes, if you're ready, grab it. Because I think that it is marketing. Some of it is who you know, some of it is being in the right place, and just be prepared to, if an opportunity comes, grab it, go run with it like you're doing with the fairs, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And see what happens with it.
Mhm.
This goes kind of with the other question about marketing. Are there any particular marketing sites that you use?
No, no, I don't, Dan. And I'm like, I am really what I said in the beginning that I have written to get all of these thoughts out of me and, just organize my thoughts and then share them with anybody who might want to read them. That's really what I've done. I have not gone to any online marketing sites. So when I have a speaking event, I take my books. And so that they're available for sale there. And that is about the biggest marketing that I do.
Well, and that's smart. That's smart. That's something that people need to think about doing when they go out and they're doing particular events and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm not big on paranormal, but I am getting more interested in it. But
Yeah.
it's not one of my major subjects that I go after. But
Mhm.
I find that when you expose yourself, when you're out there doing something else, bring your books with you.
Yeah.
Sign them, whatever people want, and you'll get some exposure there. But
Mhm.
it's not. There is no magic to this. There is
Yeah.
no magic. There
A
is
lot
no.
of hard work, right? Just a lot
Yeah,
of hard work.
you just gotta. You have to be persistent too.
Mhm.
You have to say, let me go out there and annoy people a little bit,
Yeah.
and remind them that I'm an author,
Yeah.
and see what happens with it.
Yeah.
So, how much importance do you give to receiving Amazon reviews?
Very little. And this speaks to my whole, I hope there comes a time in my life where this is the center, of my life for a time where writing and marketing my books really is
Right.
really, really important to me. And then I will put more effort into asking people for reviews and such. I don't even, honestly, Dan, I don't even know what reviews I have on there right now. I'm involved in a few other things in my life right now. And so my books are really important to me because they're a part of who I am. But marketing them and hearing what other people think has not been important to me yet. I think it will be in the future at some point.
Well, it will help you. I mean, I'm not, totally, you know, uh, worried about Amazon reviews. I mean, my first book, Butterfly Wish, I think has like 35 reviews, and most of them are good.
Mhm.
But I don't let it control me. My second book only got 6 reviews.
Mm.
I'm still talking about getting people to do reviews on it, but
Mhm.
it doesn't affect what I do. It doesn't
Yeah.
really. My third book's only been out a short time. I think I got 1 or 2 reviews on it. I don't let it I don't let it control me. I think it's good to get reviews. And here's the interesting part that I think, maybe you might not agree with me, but I think any review is important, whether it's good or bad. I don't think you should worry, oh, I got a bad review. Somebody doesn't like my book. So what?
Yeah.
They read it. They read it. That's what you want them to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's not going to like your books. I mean, I got a couple of negative responses on my first book because it's a tough subject matter. What I covered in Butterfly Wish. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't think it was for women at all because when I first wrote it, I said women aren't going to read this because they're not going to like it. It's too honest. It's too brutal. It's not something. And I was wrong. I was totally wrong. I got a lot of women that read it. Yeah. So you never know. You just never know.
That's interesting. I agree with you about any review is a good review. When I go on to buy something, I look at the 1-star reviews and I look what they say because I want to know why are they giving it that 1 star.
There you go. Yeah.
And usually, I mean, not just books, but other things too. Usually it's somebody who's just a sour person, not always. Yeah. Sometimes the product is not good.
Yeah.
But
well,
so
not
often,
for them anyway. Right.
Yeah. And so a 1-star review or a 2-star review on a book, if they give a good explanation, then the person who reads that may say, well, I don't care about that. And they look at the 5-star reviews and that is what I care about. So I agree with you. And reviews get people looking, right? It just gets more people looking. So I agree with you on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, every book that's written isn't meant for everybody, but it should be available to everybody. It's
right.
Okay. So maybe somebody doesn't like my subject matter. So fine. At least they read it. They can give it a 1 or 2 or 3-star review. That's fine. That's what they feel about it. That's fine. It's all part of the struggle of being an author.
Yes.
You have to take the good with bad. I think anyway.
Yes.
But like you say, someone who gives you a less than pleasant review doesn't mean you should stop writing. That's for sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's too many people out there that will enjoy your writing, and I have a feeling I'm going to be one of them with you. I'm going to read that book. It sounds interesting to me.
Oh, awesome.
But anyway, do you have any advice for struggling authors who are discouraged by the slow progress they're making in the world of book selling?
Yeah. Just that book selling is hard. Like that's, if you want to be an author, have a day job too, but
yes,
but don't let it, like you said earlier, if you're in it to get rich, you're probably not going to, number one. And number two, it's not going to be that good. Write what you know and what you love and what is inside of you. Just use it as a way to share yourself with the world, and don't be ashamed of that. Like whatever it is that's in you, write it and get it out there. And instead of if you can't spend money on an editor, chances are in your circle of friends, somebody who would love to read and give you their feedback, or somebody who's like really good with details or grammar and can say, hey, as far as the copy goes, the topic is great. All of the content is great, but you need to change, be sure to put the period inside the parentheses or something like that. Right. And so chances are, somebody, so don't let the little things stop you from writing or from publishing. Publishing is now, self-publishing is so easy. So just do it. Just keep doing it.
I think the primary, and I agree just with exactly what you said. I think it's good advice, but I think you have to stop worrying about what people think about what you're writing. You have to write to write. It's not going to please everybody. There's people that are going to say this is too far-fetched, or it's too brutal, or it's too this or too that. So what? This is what you want to tell. This is the story you want to tell. Tell it. Yeah. See what happens after that. That's all. That's what I think. People are too hung up with what if people don't like me.
Yeah.
So what?
I agree with you. And the other piece of advice I would give is my best published writing has undergone so many revisions. The others that I used to, my earlier writing, just like a couple of revisions and it's out there, and I need to go in and revise some more. But my later ones, I have gone over and over and over, and each revision has given it so much more, like, well, it's better writing for one, but also better content, more content,
Sure.
stronger messages, and more entertaining. And so, like, expect that you are going to have if you print them out, you're going to have a stack this big before you actually publish it.
Yeah,
As you go over it and over it and over it again. And don't be in a hurry to publish it. Write it and then revise it, and then have somebody read it, then revise it again, and just keep on going until it's kind of like, artists are never done painting until somebody takes the painting and says it's good enough, right? Stop painting. And it's kind of the same with writing. Just keep revising. And if you're in a hurry, sure, go ahead and self-publish it, but go back to it a few more times and go make those changes.
Which we all do. I've done it with my first book and my second book,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm probably going to have to do it with my third book. It's okay.
Yeah.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Get it out there. I mean, don't rush it out there, but
Mm-hmm.
once you think you're ready, get it out there.
Yeah.
And let the public read it, because you got something to offer.
Yes.
And there's so much. People say, well, this is garbage, or why did he write this, or why did she write that? It's because it's what you wanted to write. And don't let people dissuade you from doing what you want to do. That's the biggest. That's my best advice to any author. Because if you worry about what people are going to think, you'll never do it. Never
Exactly.
So,
And Dan, there are other ways to get your writing out there too. Blogs are a wonderful way to share your writing.
absolutely.
And there are all kinds of online journals and magazines who may want excerpts or short stories, or maybe some fiction, maybe some nonfiction, maybe poetry. But there's so many places in existence that will welcome submissions. So open up your online world and see what people want out there. And maybe if you've written an entire book, but can take just a section of it and submit it to several places for publishing, that will help you, help in encouraging you to say, hey, this got published. I might not be able to publish my thick novel right now, but I've got some other things published. And that's encouraging, right?
Yes, definitely. That's good advice right there. Never give up on yourself. That's what I always tell new authors out there. Don't give up on yourself, no matter what. I don't care what your friend thinks or what your family thinks. It's what you think that counts. Most families, in fairness, will support you. I mean, they're going to support you. Like you have a lovely family, and you guys work together, and you work on projects together, and of course your dad is just phenomenal. I mean, and he's a very talented author too.
Thank you. Yes,
absolutely. And so just stick together and don't let anybody dissuade you from what you want to do.
Yes,
it's your dream. Dream it and live it. That's the way I feel about it.
I love that, Dan.
Yeah, unfortunately we're almost out of time, but what I wanted to do is give you one chance at the end to make a closing statement, so to speak, before we say goodbye. So if there's anything else you want to share, this is the time to do it.
Okay. Well, I would also like to say that it's so helpful to have readers, have a community of readers. So people that you share your work with, and they share their work with you, and you give honest feedback. I mean, like you said, family is a great place to go, but chances are your mom is going to say anything you do is beautiful and good, right? Right.
Sure they
and
will,
so to surround yourself with critical readers who will give you the feedback that you need to, because we do always want to continue to progress and to become better at everything that we're doing. So surround yourself with people of like minds who, I mean, they don't have to like the same subject, but also like to read and like to write, and then just trade services there, and just immerse yourself in what you love to do, and surround yourself with people who love it too. That's my last piece of advice.
Oh, that's well said. No, I agree with that 100%. You just share everything you do with other people, other readers, other writers, and and it'll help you. It'll never hurt you. Even if it's a bad feedback that you're getting from somebody, it'll never hurt you. Never hurt you.
Yep.
So,
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I am so excited to be here because I've watched you and I love what you're doing for the author community. Thank you so much, Dan.
Oh, I appreciate it, and I think this was a great interview, and I look forward to reading more books from you when you decide to write them. I like I said, I am going to read your historical fiction novel. I'm looking forward to that. But
awesome.
I do appreciate the time you offered me to give me a chance to look into your world of writing, and I just wish you the best. And tell your dad I said hi.
I will.
And we'll see what happens from here. But good luck with everything you do.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Bios to Books. I'm Dan Davidson, and until next time, remember, new discoveries never come without searching for them first.
Thank you for watching this episode of Bios to Books. We hope you enjoyed this episode with author Denalee Call Chapman. Denalee writes books in both the fiction and nonfiction category. Denalee's books may also be found on Amazon.com, including her newest release, Rural Delivery No. 3.
Bios to Books is an RCJ production. We also have some books that you might find interesting that are available on Amazon. Skullduggery at Downtown Medicine Mound by Dennis Boyd Call. The Last Roman by B.K. Greenwood. Arizona's Haunted Route 66 by Deb Branning. Old World Magic in the Modern World by Patty Negri. Masquerade by Kara Lockwood. Legacy of the Tigers by Iris Yang. The Final Position by Ian MacDonald. Two Souls United by Rebecca Hefner. Mermaids Marian Green by Alice Renaud. Depolarized by Nick Arias. Battle of Fortune Wells by Daniel C. Chamberlain. And let's not forget about our books by Daniel Davidson and Rick Marcano. You have Butterfly Wish, available on Amazon. Twice Upon a Time, also available on Amazon. The Soul of Juby Walker. And another one they're working on is Tasting Raindrops. These are all available on bookbaby.com and Barnes & Noble Nook. Also available from RCJ's Productions, The Truth About Beer and Straight Up Paranormal, Coffee Table Chronicles, Highway to Your Health, and Parapalooza. You can come on over and hit the like button.